1 year. I said, I'm going to give myself 1 year. I'm going to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to give this thing a shot for 1 year. And if it doesn't work, I'll come back to business school and get a job.
Doug was one of the greatest American entrepreneurs of his generation. And he picked Charlotte and he picked North Carolina as home when he could have gone anywhere in the world, or at least in America, to make his headquarters. But he selected Charlotte when he was a young guy, about 28 years old, and I've known him ever since. And just a heart of gold. And we've lost a giant at a very young age, and a very, very close personal friend.
Mortgage community still reeling from the tragic news that LendingTree founder Doug Lebda passed away in a tragic ATV accident 8 days ago on a newly purchased sprawling farm in North Carolina. Doug was a hard-knocking, self-made man from rural Pennsylvania who came from very little and grew to be a titan in the mortgage industry and a champion for consumers and fairness. He was a problem solver, and he was a visionary, and the reactions and tributes have been far and wide. And today on One-on-One, a tribute of our own as I welcome in John Henson, who worked alongside Lebda from 2014 to 2020 in multiple capacities in the legal realm, both around strategy and compliance. And I welcome John now. John, thanks for being with us. Really sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you, Greg. And obviously our hearts go out to, not only Doug's family, which is super important, but the whole LendingTree family and the people that he's touched, because it's just come clear since Doug passed away how far and wide that net goes, right? And you really see the impact that this one person has had on so many people's lives.
He had a tremendous one on you. Tell us about it.
He did. I had the pleasure to work for Doug both when I was in the compliance role, but then when I stepped into the role as interim GC, I got to work very closely with him. We traveled together some, went to DC, met with senators and congressmen there, and then also just dealing with the board of directors there as well. And it's just the way you see him treat people really in so many ways that didn't change, right? Whether it was the receptionist who Doug was incredibly fond of, or congressmen. And it was just amazing to see that. And obviously the tributes that you've seen over the last few days and the stories told just really highlight that generosity and that Doug had, and then also just that ability to treat people all the same. Like you had the feeling when you talked to him that you were the most important person at that time. And that is, people say that all the time about people, but it was really true with Doug. And I can remember when there was a Christmas party and we'd had a board meeting that day, and Doug came and talked to me, and my wife was sitting there, and he said, "We're so lucky John's here. He's so smart. What do you think about John working here?" And my wife was like, "Oh, he loves it, blah, blah, blah." And my wife is married to me, so she's cynical as well, right? And she was like, "That was really nice of him to come say that." And he had that conversation with everybody and their spouse. And it was just, that is one of those things that you don't have to do when you're the CEO, but he did it. And, related to that, I can tell you this: every year at the Christmas party, he would say, thank everybody for the work they did. And he said, but more importantly, I want to thank your families that are here too, because your families are the ones who are sacrificing by giving you, the employee, to us, LendingTree. And he recognized that of like your spouse or significant other is giving you to the company and letting you work there and letting you use that time to help build his company. And he was very appreciative of that. He was very appreciative of people who worked with him.
Yeah, you talk about the LendingTree family. I mean, he was a family man, as I mentioned at the top here. He grew up in a rural area of Pennsylvania, played outside a lot, spent a lot of time at his grandmother's house. He talked in an interview that I watched about the fact that his grandfather didn't go to college, was a coal miner, didn't have running water in his house, and then his parents didn't come from much. They were teachers, and they talked to him a lot about fundamentals and how to save money and to be responsible and to be able to take care of yourself. How was that? How did you see those attributes in the man that he was?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because he and I really connected over that. And we connected over it at a board meeting, actually. It was one of those board meetings that you sit and you go around the room and you tell something people don't know about you. And I'm from a super small town in Tennessee, very rural. My parents weren't, doctors, lawyers, or anything impressive. But we talked about it, and my parents owned a small business, and Doug loved that. He loved anybody who was entrepreneurial. It didn't matter. And you could see it from interactions with him, in dealing with entrepreneurs in our company, people that left the company to go be our entrepreneurs. Like, he still kept relationships there. He helped those people as much as he could. In dealing with our partners, right? Some tributes came in over the week from partners of ours and who have known Doug for a long time. And the way he talked about those is, those are people trying to build businesses. And he told a story that was at a conference, and somebody came up, a lender came up to him and stopped him in the hall and said, "I made more money this year than I've made my entire career because of what you built." And he got touched. I mean, he got emotional telling that story every time he told it. And, it was that kind of thing that he understood. Not only am I building this company builds other companies. And there was that was a source of immense pride for him.
He talks, or people talk a lot about his brain. We just heard from in the beginning here, we heard from former North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory, who called him a giant and a good friend. And I didn't play this part, but he said he just had a different kind of brain. Like, he just could see things that others couldn't. What was it like to be around him? What kind of thinker was he?
When we would go in there and talk about legal issues with him, he understood them completely. And he didn't have any legal training. Obviously, running big companies, you have legal issues all the time, and you get used to them, right? And I can remember there were a dozen times that he would ask questions and make me or my boss at the time, who was general counsel, we would leave the meeting and be like, "What just happened?" Like, he completely changed our viewpoint on it because he understood the issues and he could see it from a different angle. And if you caught him in the right mood, he had his Sharpie and his legal pad where he's scribbling, and it looks like the notes of a crazy person. But once you deciphered what he was writing, it was just it was right, and it was a great way to look at it and would give you a different viewpoint. So yeah, he definitely could see things differently, and he viewed things differently, and he was not constrained by your choices, right? So, like, you always want to give solutions to problems when you go talk to your boss, right? And you'd be like, "Hey, so here's the problem. I think it's A, I think it's B, or I think it's C. We could do any of those things." And then he'd be like, "Well, what about X, Y, and Z?" And then he would tell you how he got there, and you're like, "Oh, well, yeah, you could do that." And
he was a problem solver.
Yeah.
And he talks about his journey to founding LendingTree, that it arose from a problem. His parents, who again taught him to be fiscally responsible, also told him, own your own home. That is the American dream. So as the story goes, as Doug told it himself, he wanted to make that dream come true, and he wanted his parents to be proud of him. So at the age of 24, he went to buy a condo that he had seen an advertisement for a great rate in the local newspaper, because back then, 1990, whatever, there wasn't what we have today.
Yep.
So he saw the rate in the newspaper. He walked into his local bank. He talks about how he put on this tie and this jacket, went in excited. Hey, I want this rate. And they said, you know what? That's not your rate. That's for somebody else. And he was like, wow, that's weird. So then, as the story goes, he went down the street to another bank. He got the same service. And so he saw a problem and decided to create the solution, and that was to take out the ambiguity and give people choices. How often did he talk about that as being the origin of the story?
Yeah, there was a guiding North Star constantly at the business. And he knew that it was, we want consumers to come in, we want to get some information from them, and we want to give them the best rate they can get and the most options they can get. And anything that's not doing that, he didn't want to do. And that stems from that exact moment, Greg. And I think, that through line, through all the changes from LendingTree, from, building it, selling it, buying it back.
Yeah, tell us about that. Can you jump into that for us? Tell us about that story.
Yeah, so he built it, when he was younger. He sold it to
he built it when he was 26, right? So
Yeah.
he had that experience at the bank, and he moved aggressively and opened up this company. And I recall him saying that he and a friend put in a little bit of money and started to brainstorm about some other ideas around finance. Then he had this issue and jumped in. So take us from that point in, I believe it was 1996. Yeah, it was 1996. He was 26 then, where the company opened and the journey it went to selling and then him getting it back. Did that happen?
So he sold it to IAC, went to New York, worked for and who runs IAC, and IAC at that point also, I think they owned Zillow, or were a big investor in Zillow. So and at that time, they wanted to spin it off, and Doug tells the story of Jack Welch telling him, hey, you need to buy this back. You need to buy this back from IAC, and you need to go run it again. And so he did. And, and you want to talk about his life work, Greg, and I'll tell you this. This is a quick, fun anecdote story. So you and I have had conversations about mortgage licensing and how it's absolutely can be horrendous, and from a state level. And we had an issue. Doug was our licensed qualified individual in some states, and licensing fell to me. And we had an account lock, okay? And on the account, and they wouldn't talk to me because I wasn't Doug. So I had to get on the phone with Doug and this poor woman at NMLS. And we sat there. I'll never forget this as long as I live. He sat there and goes, do you know the email address it is? And he goes, well, it's doug@tree.com. No, that's not it. Okay, well, it's dlebda@tree.com. No. Okay, then it's doug@lendingtree.com. No. Then it's doug@tree.com. No. And then after like 6 of these, he goes, ma'am, I've never had any other email addresses. And I thought that for a second. And Greg, he was right. He didn't have any other email addresses. There was no doug@gmail.com, Doug at Yahoo. It was only Tree or LendingTree. And to me, that's a funny story, but it shows you this guy grew up with the internet and matured with the internet, and that's it. To me, that quick snapshot shows of how important he was, and this company is, right? Of it's there at the beginning, and he didn't have any other emails that weren't associated with LendingTree.
When you were last there, which was 2020,
and
we were full throttle in the internet lead game. So, when you sat around the table and talked about where things were going to go, what do you think his vision was for that in terms of, did he have to reinvent himself in that 7-year period in terms of leads and how they were passed and how they were monetized? And of course you had other entities too, Bankrate and others that were doing similar kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that he saw LendingTree did it with my LendingTree that they now call Spring. And it was that Credit Karma, like, we have all your financial information all together, and then, you know, in one place, and you can go get loans or credit cards or whatever. And like, I think he saw that as like, this is the next evolution, right? It's not just about form fills. It's like, how do we create a scenario and a brand that becomes your financial assistant, or lack of a better term, right? So all your information's in there. You can manage all your loans and everything there. And I think that was kind of the next evolution of what he thought the company should be, because it goes back to, right, that initial kernel of the idea of, let's get the customer's information, present them the options, and they can figure out how it grows. And you could see, talking with him through products, that it came back to that, but you could see where he felt it was a evolution or distraction, right? Like, yeah, we could do all these other things, but that's not what we do here. That's not the kernel that we're trying to continue to grow out. So I think you saw it in that. You saw it in, while we were there, in acquisitions we made, right? Like, obviously LendingTree is known for mortgage, but buying Quote Wizard and seeing the understanding of the insurance industry and how that works hand in hand in this same scenario there, right? Of helping the customer get the best financial information possible from good partners. And I think that was always something else that he believed in, was like, we want to help customers get matched by good partners, people that are going to do right by the customer. And you see that with LendingTree awards that they've done, highlighting that customer service from clients. You see it from, the lender summit that LendingTree puts on, of like, we want to help our lenders be better partners and help help the customers better.
What's your favorite Doug Lebda story?
So we have town hall quarterly, and part of town hall was Doug gets up, talks about the business, and then he would open it up for questions, and he would give the best question, in his opinion, $100. Okay. And I had a knack for knowing what Doug wanted to talk about, right? Like, because, he was one of these people that there's always something simmering under the surface that he kind of wants to talk about, but it may not be one of the topics, but he wants to talk about it. And I asked a question. I don't even remember the question, but he was like, "Oh God, I'm so glad you brought this up. I wanted to talk about this." Great. He answers the question. I get $100. That's fantastic. Next quarter, I kind of figured out again what he wanted to talk to, but I knew he wouldn't call me and give me the $100 twice. So I went to our paralegal, Dana, and said, "Look, here's the question you're going to ask. You're going to get $100. You're going to give me 50 of it." And so she goes and answers the question. Ask the question. Doug goes, "Oh my God, that's such a great question." Gives her the $100. I get the $50. That night, again, I think it was one of the town halls that was around the Christmas party. And Megan, who was Doug's wife, was also head of PR, and she and I had a great relationship. And she laughed and she goes, "Did you plant that question with Dana?" And I said, "Yes." And she gave me $50. So Doug comes up to me, we're at the bar, and he goes, "I heard you planned that question." And I was like, "Yeah, I did." He was like, "I heard you made $50 off of it." And I said, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "You do a shit job at negotiating rev shares. You should have got way more than $50. And he turns around and walks off. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. The next town hall, he goes, "Anyone have a question that was not given to them by John Henson?" And he brought it up constantly. He and I talked about it constantly. So that was a good story.
Yeah, you mentioned his wife, Megan.
Yep.
He's survived by her and his 3 daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and his parents are still alive as well.
Yeah.
What kind of family man was he? How often did he talk about his family? And can you give us some light into that?
So he and Megan got married while I was there, and they were very close. I mean, they traveled together a lot. He would go on trips a lot with her, and then take the girls as well. He was active in the girls' life when they were in school. Obviously, they were obviously younger when I was there, right? But watching them grow, and he was very excited when I was leaving. He was very excited because the oldest one was going to college and doing college tours, and he was excited about her going to see Bucknell.
His alma mater.
Which is where he went. And, so that kind of thing you could tell he was very excited to do things like that with his kids and just have those normal dad interactions, right?
Yeah, for sure. And for you, in getting ready for this, I know that, the timing of this, the shocking nature of it has given you pause. In terms of your relationship even with Doug, because you had not kept in as close of touch as maybe you would have liked to, looking back.
Yeah, and I think that, when you lose someone like this, it makes you think of all the people who have helped you get to where you are. And I would not be telling you the truth if I said that this hasn't given me pause. It has. I have texted people I've worked with at LendingTree that I probably haven't kept in touch with and said, hey, this has really made me stop and think. And I just want you to know how much I enjoyed working with you and how much I attribute whatever success I may or may not have had to you. So I think that's something we can all do better of, Greg. And it shouldn't take something like this to make you stop and think about how those people in your life, right? But I think that we all probably have 5 to 10 people that we can say this person was pivotal in me becoming who I am professionally and personally, right?
Yeah.
And we should let those people know.
Yeah. Knowing what you know about Doug and how well you knew him, you traveled with him. Obviously, you were close with him at the time when you were working with him. How do you think he'd want the mortgage industry to remember him?
You know what? I think you're seeing it. I think that he wants to know, he would want people to know that helping customers was the most important thing for LendingTree. And you know this as well as I do. I think he would be happy to know that if people thought LendingTree helped pull the mortgage industry forward in customer acquisition, in marketing ideas, and lead generation in general, if people said this guy was pivotal in that, I think he would be happy. And it's funny because in the last year or so, working for clients as outside counsel, like you see it in other verticals. Like I had this conversation last week, Greg, like with a different vertical. Like, guys, your problem is you're 10 years behind where mortgage is, right? Like mortgage is so far ahead of you from a lead generation standpoint. And Doug has a lot to do with that. Like Doug and LendingTree has a lot to do with that. And I think that that's something to be commended.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's very, very gracious and generous of you to spend some time with us and give us a close-up window of what it was like to work with Doug Lebda, founder of LendingTree.com, gone way too soon, died at the age of 55. John, thank you very much. Hopefully we'll talk down the road under brighter terms. But thank you for spending time with us and sharing those stories.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Appreciate your time. We'll see you next Monday on One-on-One.